All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Janie Maxwell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association. And on behalf of the Illinois Department of Public Health, the University of Illinois Extension, and the Illinois Farmers Market Association, it's my pleasure to welcome you to part one of our Food Safety Summit on Local Health Department Farmers Market Regulatory Refresher. Today we'll be hearing from Dara Dunlap and from Anna Yates from the Illinois Department of Public Health. The Illinois Farmers Market Association is the umbrella organization for farmers markets across the state. We think we have well over 300 markets, and we are really excited to partner with our local health departments to make sure that farmers markets are not only a source of community engagement and food access and all those wonderful things, but also that we're very cognizant of food safety. Over the last few years, in partnership with IDPH, we have been trying to build a knowledgeable base of farmers market managers and vendors, as well as foster positive relationships with local health departments. So we're really excited to bring this to you today, and I'm going to turn it over to Dara.
Thank you, Jeannie, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to say thank you to the Farmers Market Association and the Extension for approaching us with the idea for this webinar series. We're really excited to do this, and we really appreciate the guidance and we are able to create together when we work with all parties at the table. So, like Janie said, the focus audience is local health departments, but I think anyone can take away some great information. We're focusing today on what we're going to call a regulatory refresher. So we're going to go over food safety at IDPH and the state regulations that are specific to farmers markets. So just as an overview of the food safety programs at IDPH, we have our food protection program, which oversees any food and beverages except for meat, poultry, eggs, and catfish. In the state of Illinois, we regulate wholesale firms, so anyone who's doing business to business. We also have our dairy program, which oversees farms, plants, grade A, and manufactured dairy products. And then just in general, to get a kind of idea what IDPH does versus what local health departments do, we set food safety standards across the state. We conduct inspections of wholesalers. We monitor the food supply and we provide technical assistance to not only the industry, but local health departments. So you're hearing today from the food protection program. This is us, so we're going to focus in on anything that wouldn't be regulated by the Illinois Department of Agriculture or the dairy program. So what does that mean in relation to how IDPH and local food protection programs work? IDPH sets minimum standards and supports local health departments through technical assistance, training, resources, and local food programs are the ones who register, permit, license, and inspect retail food businesses. We have approximately 97 certified local health departments across Illinois that the department works with. And for retail food, it is myself and Anna who are kind of the lead. So just to give you a little bit of background, my name is Dara Dunlap. I'm the food program manager. I oversee both retail and manufactured food at the state level. My background is from a local health department, and I was once lucky to be a food inspector with Sangamon County, who would do the two farmers markets within Springfield until I moved to the Department of Public Health to do food program. Anna, do you want to say hi, give a brief intro?
Sure. My name is Anna Yates. I am the Retail Food Program Coordinator at IDPH. I am on my 10th year in food safety. I started in 2016 at a local health department, and then I am on my third year with IDPH. So My background, as most of you know, is I have a very strong passion for food safety, retail standards, FDA food code. So if you ever need anything, I'm your girl.
So right now, Anna and I make up the retail team, but we are currently in the process of hiring on a second program coordinator. So we're really excited to expand what we're able to offer. In general, we have to recognize that our local health departments are the local food safety experts, and you guys are the ones out there providing additional guidance and resources outside of inspections and helping these vendors as they get ready for the market season. So, what we want to focus on today is equipping you with the right information about the regulations and the codes so that you can get everybody started on the right path. So again, when we're talking about farmers markets or just food safety in general, the regulatory agencies, IDPH is the one who is doing the farmers market sampler certificate, which Anna is going to cover in depth today. And we do wholesale processors and warehouses, except we do not do anything that the Illinois Department of Agriculture regulates, so meat, poultry, catfish, or egg products. Local food protection programs, again, highlighting that those are retail, direct-to-consumer sales. They cover cottage food registration, farmers market permits, food establishments, and temporary food establishments. Yep. So overview, I want to talk a little bit about farmers market history. I've been with the program since about 2022, and I had not taken an in-depth look at kind of the history behind farmers markets and farmers markets in Illinois. So I want to share a little bit about that because I think it helps bring context to our conversations. I want to talk about the benefits of farmers market. Janie touched on this very briefly in her introduction, but I want to expand on that. Vendors' responsibilities and public health duties. I think sometimes people need that background and understanding how that relationship works. I'm going to go over the different vendor types that we see in farmers market settings, talk about the farmers market regulations that apply, and then Anna is going to dive into farmers market sampling, and we'll both talk about resources kind of throughout. So Anna, if you could put that Slido link. We do have a Slido today just to be interactive, keep everyone engaged. You can join from your browser, you can join from your phone if you have a QR code, but we have some questions that we'd like to ask. And so that's slido.com, hashtag farmers market, and the passcode is down there below. And we'll get a couple people. So it's been a while since I've played from this version, so hopefully it will work. So we're just going to take a moment for people to join. If you could start flooding the chat to see if I can have people who are joining. Give me an emoji, maybe. Thumbs up, reactions. I say, or else I'm just talking to myself, right? Seeing some people are getting on. Anybody having trouble? I'll give it another few seconds.
It looks like we're at 24, 25. It's going up.
Oh, Anna, they're getting an error saying there's no link. You can try slido.com as well to join. Passcode is GGDDZ3. It's available on the screen.
Oh,
All right, Anna, are we looking good?
It looks like we are at 34, 35. Slowly climbing.
All right, I'm gonna move on so that we have enough time, but if you want to join, that link is still available and the passcode's been added to the chat. So, where do you think the oldest farmers market in Illinois is located? Oh, Kankakee, right out there. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of Chicago and Springfield, which I guess is to be expected. Paw Paw. I don't know if I know where that is. Carbondale around Chicago. Joliet, Aurora. Oh, wow, we have way more than 35 now. Oh, I love the emoji. I don't know. Cairo, Galena, good guess. Say, do you know how many we have joined, Anna? I see 63.
Mine must be wrong because mine only shows 40 that are live. So,
All right, then I'm gonna move on. So a lot of us think Chicago, Springfield. I could see that. So just for a little context, farmers markets have been around for a long time. They have ancient roots. Earliest markets were, and modern markets still are, essential gathering spots for trading food. In the US, the oldest known market still operating in the US started in 1730. It is the Lancaster Central Market in Pennsylvania. And over the years, that market has continued to change. And there's evidence that that farmers market may have had over 400 vendors at one point. So, farmers markets in general are part of our cultural background. Really, since kind of the beginnings of the United States, we have this history. The buying and selling of fresh local produce, meats, and baked goods were essential to daily lives. There's even evidence of curb markets from 1818 until World War I, where local farmers and merchants would set up wagons on curbs of streets to sell goods to their communities. So it's been a practice for a long time. Farmers markets have increased in number and popularity over the years and continue to evolve as a favorite place to gather and socialize in many communities. Most of the long-running farmers markets in Chicago region, I think, are about 40, or in the Illinois are between 45 and 50 years born in the 1970s, kind of as a resurgent. But from my research, and Janie, feel free to step in if I'm off. I believe one of the oldest is the that is continuously been running is the Aurora's Farmers Market in Illinois, which is returning for its 115th season in 2026.
I would agree.
So that is incredible. We've had a long history, and in Illinois, we have this fantastic market that has been running continuously for 115 seasons. So they're a deep part of us and our community. Jamie talked about this. I guess this is more of a question on if you're paying attention. How many farmers markets do you think there are in Illinois? I hope somebody misprinted because three is not right. I like the specific numbers where people are coming in with 398, that feels very, very specific. I wonder if somebody knows something we don't. A lot. I appreciate that. Yes. I will give away that there is a lot. I see five more people kind of typing out, and then we can. All right, so we're all thinking 350, 300 plus, 400, right between that kind of 300 to 500 range, it seems like. Jeannie kind of said it earlier. I think when I reached out to Janie, the Illinois Farmers Market Association estimates that there are about 300 to 350 farmers markets operating throughout Illinois. There's about 40 winter markets. I found this incredible Enjoy Illinois posting about all of these different markets if you're interested in getting some background. But yes, so they're very significant. They're a very significant part of our communities, of our food system. There are several hundred throughout our state. So obviously, we have to distinguish what makes a farmer's market, and not like any other kind of event. So, highlighting farmers market's key characteristic, it's the direct-to-consumer sale. Locally grown produce or locally produced farm products. A big part of the attraction of a farmer's market is the product freshness and the communal market with multiple vendor types. And typically they're set on a set day with a designated recurring location. Beyond produce, again, something that I had not appreciated or looked into kind of before we walked into doing this series is that there's a lot of benefits to farmers markets kind of outside of just bringing produce. There is a national study that showed that farmers markets are much more than just a place to buy produce. They're community hubs that boost health, they foster social connections and support local economies. So this study that was done by researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Farmers Market Coalition provided compelling evidence that there's a lot of community benefits to having a farmers market. Increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, revitalizing neighborhoods, promoting sustainable environment, uh, sustaining environmental, I wrote that wrong. Just promoting sustainable living through consumption of local foods, empowering community members to learn more about what they buy, encouraging social interaction and physical activity, serving as critical food sources in underserved areas. Often farmers markets accept nutritional assistance benefits like SNAP. In that survey, I thought it was very interesting. They found that 80% of their attendees visited a farmer's market at least once per year, and 41% of those respondents were frequent attendees, attending 6 or more times a year, which is incredible. And so again, with farmers markets, we see improved health with over 75% of attendees reporting eating healthier due to market purchases. Community connection, which is, I think, really big right now. Nearly 48% of those surveyed reported connecting with others in their community at the market. And it really does have a local economic boost. 49% shopped at nearby local restaurant or at local businesses, and 42% ate at local restaurants. So farmers markets support the communities they're in a lot of different ways. Interestingly enough, this study kind of revealed one key challenge that was identified by farmers markets. Any guess on what that was? I'm curious because I think I saw some managers, some people with market manager tags out there. I love the weather. I definitely, the more I become involved with the Farmers Market Association and this community, weather definitely is a lot bigger than I think about. vendor participation, registration, permitting, attendance. I don't think I've actually seen it yet, which is funny. Temperature control, definitely public health out there, vendor retention, and local health departments um, take this in, kind of recognize these challenges, because while the study didn't identify these challenges, these are things faced by our farmers markets. Properly licensed vendors, vendor retention. I see three more. Winter. All right. Power. So yeah, there's a lot of different challenges that they faced. This study in particular, what was interesting is I felt kind of seen because the key challenge they identified for farmers markets and attendance was forgetting about the market. So actual recognizing when the market occurred and making sure that farmers market managers stood out or worked on, making sure people knew when the market was occurring, which I thought was very interesting. So, with that kind of background on farmers markets, kind of the challenges they face and the benefits that they bring, I'm going to move now into the regulatory discussion. So, when we talk about a farmers market in Illinois, we have a very set definition. This definition comes out of 410 ILCS 625, which is the Illinois Food Handling Regulation Enforcement Act. And a farmers market means a common facility or area where the primary purpose is for farmers to gather to sell a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables and other locally produced farm products directly to consumers. So again, highlighting that the purpose of a farmers market is those local source products and direct to consumer, so retail. When we're talking about farmers markets and any food business, what's important to outline that food businesses have responsibilities in ensuring that their food is safe to eat, including making sure that food preparations are clean and hygienic, ensuring food handlers wash their hands regularly, don't contaminate food, keep food covered and hot, cooling food within 2 hours of cooking. Not something we normally see in a farmer's market, but something that could be important. Having a food safety plan and processes in place, appointing food safety supervisors, ensuring food handlers are adequately trained. And kind of the biggest one, and the one that we're going to touch on today, is ensuring that businesses comply with food safety regulations. If you are a food business owner, a manager, a supervisor, you need to know the food safety laws in your state, in Illinois, and in your city, and the city that you're operating in to ensure that everyone in the organization is following all of the applicable requirements. It's also that responsibility of the person in charge or that supervisor or manager to foster a strong culture of food safety, ensuring that safe food handling practices are incorporated kind of into the everyday work and routines. So it's important for people to set an example by demonstrating that no one is above or exempt from food safety rules. And that's not to be confused with the duties of public health. So as public health officials, we also have responsibilities and duties in ensuring the safety of the food supply by developing guidance and regulations. We enforce regulations to protect the public, including through inspections and requiring corrective actions, investigating complaints in suspected or confirmed cases of foodborne illness, and assessing facilities to understand processes, aiding other food programs through training, technical assistance, and program evaluation. And probably one of the ones that we don't get recognized for a lot, but we do a lot, is consumer education as well. So kind of with those different kind of the role of the business and the role of public health, I want to cover kind of the different vendors that you might see operating in a farmer's markets. And this is one of those things to highlight is probably one of the biggest challenges that we as public health officials face in a farmer's market is there are a lot of different vendors operating under different regulations. So kind of an overview, we have the raw agricultural products and commodities for no permits, which generally require no permits. We have those that are operating under the Illinois Food Code or the FDA Food Code, including temporary food establishments or mobile food establishments. And then we have those that are operating under state statute. So Illinois Farmers Market regulations can be found in that Food Handling Regulation and Enforcement Act 3.3 to 3.5. So we have our farmers market permits and our produce vendors. We have cottage food regulations for 10 ILCS 625-4. They're operating under those cottage food regulations. And then something that came a couple years ago, and I think maybe not always involved in farmers markets, but something that we've seen more and more of is lemonade stands or beverage stands, which are outlined by 410 ILCS 625 3.9, which are beverage stands that are operated by the person under the age of 16. So I'm going to go through all of these different vendor types just to give you some background and kind of give you a focus on what you would look at in that scenario. Actually, slightly out of order, so I'm going to start here. So there are certain items that are allowed without restrictions or typically without a permit. And these are items that are regulated as raw agricultural products. We also call them raw agricultural commodities and under the Illinois Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Generally, these are reference to fresh fruits and vegetables that have been minimally risked, unprocessed, and not ready to eat. Grains, seeds, beans, and nuts. Again, with that theme, whole, unprocessed, and unsprouted. Popcorn, kernels only, not popped popcorn. Fresh herbs that are dried, microgreens, cultivated mushrooms, raw honey, honey and comb. These are all things that that would not need a permit to sell in a farmer's market because they're considered raw agricultural commodities and not prepared foods. Going back. So temporary food and mobile. These are the people in the farmers market that are selling kind of on-site preparation, immediate service foods, ready-to-eat foods. They continue to be regulated under the Illinois Food Code and the FDA Food Code as adopted. That could vary between temporary and mobile. I think some people may even have farmers markets that have, or farmers market locations where they may have somebody kind of permanently there. I'm thinking, in Springfield, we have fairgrounds that have a farmers market. So there could be incidents where there could be a kind of permanent location or some sort of facility on site. So temporary on-site preparation of ready-to-eat foods for immediate service and or sampling. These are inspected either. So the thing with temporary food service is that immediate service, ready to eat, they may be an inspected food establishment with prepackaged products, or they could be doing all of their prep on site. Depending on what you're looking or on the type of operation, you tailor your inspection to understand more of those kind of things. Mobile food trucks providing immediate service of ready to eat foods. Again, the focus there would be application of the FDA food code. Cottage food. Cottage food's regulated under the Illinois Food Handling and Regulation Act. These would be home prepared, prepackaged, and label foods. So they should stand out, registered with the local health department where they are located. Like I said, lemonade stands. We call them lemonade stands in the law, but they're not limited to lemonade. These are beverage stands operated by persons under the age of 16, and they cannot be regulated as long as they're selling beverages and nothing else. And that could include lemonade, non-alcoholic drinks, or mixed beverages by the age of, again, the key point being that the stand operator is under the age of 16. Farmers market permits, these came around a few years ago and they're very specific. They cover farmers selling frozen TCS foods with a main ingredient that was grown or raised on the farmer's farm, meat, poultry, dairy, and eggs raised or grown on the farm of the farmer selling the food product. And this is a permit that must be obtained from each local health department that chooses to require a permit for each unit of local government in which sales take place. So what that means is if a local health department chooses to regulate farmers markets, they do so with the farmers market permit, and that the vendor has to acquire that permit in each location that they sell in. So the farmers market permit, we're going to go in a little deeper there, has specific requirements, particularly for cold holding. So farmers market vendors must provide effective means to maintain temperatures 41 or below or 32 or below 32, and they must provide thermometers accurate to plus or minus 3 degrees. If it's a meat, dairy, or poultry product that does not require refrigeration, they must provide a HACCP plan or food safety plan from a licensed facility as evidence of product safety. So farmers market vendors are required to provide effective means, and that could be an insulated, hard-sided, cleanable cooler, given that they have sufficient ice or cooling means. It's important to note that the law states that a local health department cannot limit a vendor's choice for refrigeration or cooling equipment, but local health departments are not precluded from requiring an alternate form of cooling if the vendor is unable to maintain food at appropriate temperatures. So in a farmer's market, you could see vendors who are using hard-sided coolers, but it's important that they are using effective ice, effective packet, or effective cooling means to make sure that that is staying the appropriate temperature. I see a question in the chat. So what if the operator of the lemonade stand is older than 16? So the law only covers beverage stands that are 16 and under. So anybody who's operating a beverage stand above that age would need to go through the typical permitting requirements. And can someone under 16 do beverage with dairy? Yes, there's no prohibited ingredients from that. That is just something, as long as it is a beverage stand, they are allowed to operate that. And I'm going to get into it a little bit more we can talk about. So in general, when people are applying for the farmers market permit, they're required to provide their farm, contact information, a list of products that they intend to sell, their name, address, and contact information. If they're using so if they have something that is a frozen product, they're required to provide the information for the facility that processes that frozen TCS product. And if they're selling eggs, they're required to provide a copy of their license issued by the Illinois Department of Agriculture. For the farmers market permit, there is a requirement that they must complete at least one annual inspection. Inspections may be on site at the farmers market or at an alternate location. So that is flexibility given to the local health department and the operator to be able to set up inspections at different locations depending on scheduling. I want to highlight something new this year. It's regarding exempt poultry in farmers markets. So typically these type of operations would fall under that farmers market permit. So Public Act 040210, effective January 1st, 2026, expanded an exemption that was previously provided from the Meat and Poultry Inspection Act. Wait, I'm going to go back for a second. So there's been a exemption for inspection provided by the Illinois Department of Agriculture for some time. Public Act 1040210 this year expanded that exemption, allowing them to process a larger number of poultry and expanded the sales avenue for poultry that is exempt. Before the effective date of this act, the exempt poultry was required to be sold on the site of the farm. Now it is allowed on the site of the farm, at farmers markets, at roadside stand, and through delivery to the consumer. So there is a possibility that you will see exempt poultry at a farmer's market. To be able to sell exempt poultry at a farmer's market, a vendor is first required to get the exemption from the Illinois Department of Ag, and then they're required to follow specific requirements. So exempt for a local health department who may be seeing exempt poultry at a farmer's market, some key things to take away is that there's required labeling. So exempt products are required to be labeled in at least 10-point font to include the producer's name, the date on which it was processed, and then the statement saying that it is not inspected. Additionally, at the point of sale, the poultry raiser must provide consumer notice saying that the poultry products were processed in an on-farm facility that is exempt from inspection by the Illinois Department of Agriculture or U.S. Department of Agriculture, and that has to be in an 18-point font. They are still required to maintain their temperatures appropriately, just like any other farmer's market vendor. Their product has to be sealed in watertight or leak-proof bags or packaging, and then at the point of sale, information is in the form of a placard, flyer, or product label regarding safe handling instructions. And that's the same thing that we see for any meat products. It's prescribed by 9 CFR 381.125B, and then the rationale statement in 381.125B22. So typically, if you're thinking about meat products that you may have in your home, it's that little infographic with the skillet that talks about how you should handle and cook meat safely. So, to provide some reasoning of the new act, this was that's not really my background. I'm hoping I'm capturing this right. From my understanding, a lot of the poultry producers were having trouble having poultry processed because there's only a select number of places throughout the state that do that. And so they sought an expansion of this exemption to be able to process more poultry on their own farm and expand that with the consumer notification and labeling in place. So I think the reasoning for the expansion is just due to, I'm trying to think of the way, lack of access to the larger processing plants, because I think there's only a handful in the state. So I hope I caught capturing that correctly, but that was kind of the reasoning for the new act is that there's issues for poultry producers getting space in these processing areas, and so this allows them to do this with appropriate notification. Exempt poultry and farmers markets. So, like I said, first, to be able to sell under this act, they have to receive that exemption issued by the Illinois Department of Agriculture. The Illinois Department of Agriculture does a great job of putting those exempt poultry processors on their website. So you can use this QR code or you can just Google Illinois Department of Ag poultry exemption, and they have anyone who has this exemption listed on their website. You can even see what county they're operating in. So if you're seeing someone in a farmer's market, you should be able to kind of quickly on your phone be able to see whether they have that appropriate exemption or not. Any more questions about poultry? I know that's kind of our newest piece of legislation coming out just this year. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end. So with that background of the different type of vendors that we might see at farmers markets operating within farmers markets, I wanted to highlight that the 5 major risk factors for foodborne illness don't change. We're still focused on things like employee health, food sources, cooking, food temperature, source of contamination. Those continue to be our primary focus when we are in the field. So out of curiosity, what risk factors are you most concerned about in a farmer's market setting? Back to Slido. Make sure you guys are awake out there listening. All right, I see it kind of slowing down. Definitely. When we were going over the challenges farmers markets uh, that farmers markets face, one of the first things that we all talked about and thought about was the weather. Markets happen typically through the spring and summer, where temperatures can be, I guess, fluctuate widely, but could be very hot. So we're very concerned about how TCS foods are being kept cold or frozen, particularly for our farmers market vendors. So food temperatures is definitely kind of primarily, I think, in the field what we're focused on. Typically, employee health and hygiene, yes, always important, particularly for our temporary food and our mobile food vendors that are kind of operating under the FDA food code. We want to make sure, or our samplers, that nobody's handling food when they are feeling ill. I probably would have put food sources next. Anna, I don't know if you feel differently. I think this primarily doesn't happen in the field, but is definitely something that as public health officials we're assessing in the kind of permitting level. So at the permitting level, we're making sure that our egg vendors have the appropriate egg license, that our meat vendors have appropriate source for, or are having their meats processed at appropriate places, that our cottage food vendors are registered. So definitely food sources, food temperatures, I think for me are the typical ones that we see in farmers market. Of course, always sources of contamination, sampling, immediate food service, and then probably just our samplers and our temporary events and our mobile trucks for cooking. But good. Anna, anything to add there? Do you have anything that I missed?
Nope, that was great.
So, inspecting farmers market vendors, like I said, different regulatory requirements depending on the vendor. And I think this is the number one challenge we face as public health officials is that you kind of have to, I don't want to say you have to switch your hat because it's all food safety, but you have to think about what you're thinking or what type of vendor you're looking at and what regulations that they need to follow. So that's probably the number one thing is to kind of quickly identify what kind of vendor is this and what regulations are they following. And then, of course, our field focuses are going to vary depending on the vendor type. That being said, let's talk about cottage food. When we are approaching a cottage food vendor at a farmer's market, what is our field focus? What is kind of the first thing that we're looking for? What is our biggest concern? Yes, I love this. I think this is kind of our number one. And I hear this not only from our public health side, but also in our from our public health side, but also from stakeholders in the cottage food group. Labeling is a challenge. And so, because of that, labeling is probably one of the biggest things that we kind of notice in the field. Additionally, proper registration. Labeling and consumer advisory, yes. Labeling approved foods. So, again, primarily we're looking at the label, the products, registration, definitely a big part of that. Anything else? I don't think I saw it, but I might have missed it. If cottage food vendors have TCS foods, that would be definitely something that we would, yes, proper temps. No open food. Yes. All right, I'm gonna. So field focus, when we are approaching a cottage food vendor, the things that we want to check in on. Is there registration available? Is there registration current? One thing you may want to do, and primarily during the permitting process, we'd like to see this, but I understand that we don't always get to see or talk to vendors until we see them in the field is make sure that their registration is available, that their registration is valid. A lot of local health departments will also write what products that they've reviewed on their registration, so that can be very helpful to assessing the products in front of you. Cottage food should be pre-packaged and labeled unless you have provided an exception. So this is a big thing in the cottage food regulations is that they are allowed to have a packaging exemption, but it is only for, it can only be issued by the jurisdiction. It is only for the jurisdiction that offered it. So if they are registered in one county and selling in another, and they have in their registration county an exemption for packaging, they have to also seek that if they are going to a different farmer's market uh, and see that that would be allowed. So typically they should be prepackaged and labeled products. They have that appropriate point of sale signage and appropriate labeling that shows that they are their products are produced in a home kitchen that also processes allergens, so they have to have that information available. Probably should have been higher on the list, but if we have a cottage food operation that has TCS foods or frozen foods, we're definitely want to be checking in to see that they have effective means to cool or to keep their food cold or frozen as appropriate. Not something that we want to probably dive into in depth with a cottage food vendor unless it's something way kind of off the rails, but prohibited products and ingredients. So if we're seeing things with meat, poultry, seafood, and they're labeling themselves as a cottage food vendor, that's definitely a red flag in the field, something we would want to be concerned about, asking more questions about. I think one thing that I want you guys to take home is that when you are dealing with a cottage food vendor and you're facing issues with any of these things, with packaging, labeling, appropriate holding, particularly prohibited products or ingredients, write down the information for the registering health department and make sure that you refer concerns in a timely manner because they're going to be the ones who are handling that registration. And definitely labels. We'll get into labels a little bit more. So up next, let's talk about our traditional farmers market vendors, our meat, poultry, dairy, eggs. What is our field focus when inspecting these type of vendors? Permits and temps. Yes, a lot of temperature. Hand washing station. Source. Michelle, I see you in the chat. Sanitation. Definitely. Cook temp if sampling. Yeah, Anna's going to dive in a little bit more into sampling, especially that special farmers market sampler certificate and how they can sample on site. Commissary base. USDA storage order. Oh, I'm seeing in the chat pests. Definitely when we're kind of selling food out in the open, it's something we have to be aware of, especially as temperatures fluctuate and we have great smells of the farmers market around us. So yeah, I'm seeing temperature, source, USDA, so that kind of falls into source. Absolutely. I think number one thing, effective cold holding. All those products, ground beef, meat, poultry, dairy, eggs, those are all things that are TCS. They need to have effective cold holding. Like I said earlier, cold holding does not have to mean refrigeration. I think a lot of these producers will use refrigeration, but it could be a hard-sided cooler. They just have to have effective means. So if people are using coolers, double checking that they have enough ice packs, that they're maintaining their temperatures. thermometers available to make sure that they're checking in on their temperatures, especially depending on where they're transporting from. Another huge thing is going to be packaging and labeling. So, like we said with the poultry exemption, making sure that packaging is appropriate, that they have all of the labeling that's required for that safe handling. You can kind of see it on that fresh ground beef. These are from the Farmers Market Safety Guide that we'll talk a little bit about later. So all that information, that seal, that Department of Agriculture seal, I think the IDOA one looks like a little state. I don't think I have a copy of that one right now. So, or if they are not using a seal, there is like this retail exemption that allows them to, depending on if they process it in retail, it should have a retail labeling, and then they should be able to provide backtrack, be able to trace back to be able to find that that product came from inspected product. So that's really important for anybody who's selling products that are not um, inspection exempt, is that you're looking for some sort of seal or that they have proper labeling that traces back to a seal. Verification of appropriate Department of Agricultural licensing. So everything you're saying, making sure that during the permitting process that you see a copy of their egg license or a copy of their meat and poultry or where they're getting their meat and poultry processed. So all of that information. So again, highlighting the farmers market permit and exempt poultry. You want to verify that they have that exemption. Cannot shout out Illinois Department of Ag more for having this wonderful website available to reference kind of anywhere you are. So if they are selling exempt poultry, you should be able to verify that on the Illinois Department of Agricultural website. I have heard them say on many occasions they are dedicated to making sure that that is up to date, so that will be available. So verification of the exemption, again, cold holding thermometers, and then if you're seeing product with that exemption, they should have the producer's name, a date, not inspected. So on these products, you will not see a seal of inspection because it is not processed under inspection. You will see the not inspected exempt labeling. And then you should see a big consumer notice at point of sale notifying the consumer that these were not processed under inspection. So just a little differences there. So our lemonade beverage stands, these continue to kind of rise in popularity. So if we see them as public health officials, we're in education only mode. I think one thing I want to take away, or that I want you guys to take away from this, is that it's probably really important to have communication with your market managers or your organizers. If you see these type of facilities at events, letting them know that they do not require a permit and that you're not able to regulate these, so that any consumer issues or food safety issues or sanitation issues you can't address. We do have education available for lemonade stands. It's available on our public website. It just provides information about sourcing safe water, keeping things off the ground, just general information. But if you are seeing issues, you can educate as always. But I think in these cases, if you're seeing beverage stands that are operated by people under the age of 16, it's just giving that event organizer, that market manager, the information of, hey, they're not regulated by us, so they can act appropriately if there's any concerns. The law is not specific on who is allowed to prepare the beverages. So I see in the chat, are parents allowed to prepare beverages? It just says operated by someone under the age of 16, so it's not addressed. Field focus, raw agricultural products. So generally, just like your under 16 beverage stand, these would not require a permit. These would be your produce, your honey. Trying to think of some good ones off the top of my head. Grains that are unprocessed. The only thing that they're required to follow in the Illinois Food Handling Regulation Enforcement Act is this piece about product origin. So they should have information available about where their produce is from. This is something that you could provide education on, share. We have an informational handout on product origin. So vendors selling specialty crops or raw agricultural products must post a placard at point of sale or include a label or packing slip with the physical address and business name. If it's applicable, they have to provide where the products are purchased. If they've purchased the products that they're bringing, products without a placard, label, or packing slip can be considered misbranded. So that's very important for them to be aware of is that they should have some sort of product origin provided. And that is one of those things that, again, because they're typically selling produce or honey, things that you don't regulate, that's something you want to have communication with for possibly your market managers, your market organizers saying, hey, here's some information, educational handouts about that. And that's available on our farmers market website for the general public. So I wanted to come back to labeling because we hear over and over again that labeling is kind of the number one issue we have with a lot of different products, not only cottage food, but other prepackaged items that can be available. So when you're thinking about labeling, general labeling for foods include common name of the product, all the ingredients, including any color, artificial flavors, preservatives that have to be listed in descending order by predominance or weight shown with the common name or usual names, the allergen labeling, which I'll get into next, and net weight or net contents, whether by weight or volume of the packaging. The nine major food allergens, the big nine. So they have to name the food source of a major food allergen on the packaging. It can either be done in parentheses following the name of the ingredient. So the example provided is flour, the allergen being wheat, or whey, the allergen being milk, or immediately after or next to the list of ingredients in what they call a contains statement. So that would be the example contains wheat and milk. It's important to know that advisory statements are not required by law, but they are something you may see. So when you see may contain or produce in a facility that also uses, those do not meet the requirement. Those are additional advisory statements added by manufacturers. And Joe, I see your question in the chat. Generally, produce vendors are exempt from food establishment requirements. So I don't think that there would be anything that would prohibit them from selling as long as they're providing some information about product origin. The only thing we have in our act would be requirements so that the consumer understands the product origin and if there was ever a public health issue that we had the ability to trace back where that product was coming from. So they would be able to sell, from my knowledge, unless there's a specific market requirement that doesn't allow that, which is important to note that markets may have additional requirements for vendors outside of public health requirements, or maybe have their own. So that unless there's something specific to the market, then the only thing that we're concerned about as far as public health is making sure that we understand where the product came from and that we're able to trace back if there was ever concern about that product. So in general, what major issues do you see when reviewing food labels? Is there kind of a trend? Font size. I'm curious for people who are saying allergens, because I can see already that it is kind of our major one. Do you guys mind putting in the chat what kind of issues you're seeing with allergens? Are they not recognizing the ingredients that contain allergens? Are they foregoing the statements entirely? Not being recognized. Oh, wanting to list all allergens. Anna, it sounds like we may need to expand on a handout. People
Yes,
using the
I
allergen
agree.
advisory statement and substitute. Yes, so it's very important to clarify with people that those may contains or those produced in a facility that those do not meet the law. To meet the law and the regulations, they have to use the contain statement or the parentheses next to the ingredients. Similarly, it's not appropriate to list all of the allergens as it may contain. It has to be addressed specific to the ingredients in the product. And this is something faced, I think, by everyone in general. Like the number one reason for recalls for manufactured foods in the United States is also missing allergens. So again, I think that we've seen some of that with the ingredients, with the sub-ingredients. So it is important that when they're using something like chocolate chips, or a mix of something that they're putting in the sub-ingredients, particularly because those could contain allergens when you're talking about things like milk chocolate. Sorry, I'm just going through the chat. So some of those things, like with the spices, you have to take a look at the food labeling guide. Sometimes that could be allowed, and that's a resource. I don't know if we reference in here, but one that we could reference in kind of more upcoming resources is that it's some things are allowed to be labeled in certain ways. Soy lectin, and don't put soy in allergens. Yes, I think sometimes soy and sesame can be kind of hard. I'm trying to go back. Date marking. So that could be something that we're concerned about is them having information on their label about date marking or making that information available. Using catchphrase micro bakery instead of cottage food. So not declaring using their cottage food regulation name. Of course, with cottage food, we have the full consumer advisory statement. So seeing things about concerns about not using the full statement. Anna, am I missing anything here that you see? It's funny to me to see the chocolate chips kind of highlighted. It's definitely a big conversation piece for us on that sub-ingredients.
Um, Font size is definitely one that comes up a lot too, about if there is a specific font size that's needed. No, we see that one a lot.
Oh, I just saw this come up too. QR code. So yes, QR codes is something that we do not accept in lieu of a written label, just because not all people have access to that. So if they're providing information in a QR code, it should be supplemental information and not information required on the label. Very interesting. And I hope you're writing that down. So again, we kind of acknowledge that labeling has been a big challenge, not only within cottage food, but kind of throughout food safety. And it's kind of one of the biggest, it is one of the most important pieces to food safety, particularly as people are using labels more and more. It's very important to the consumer that labeling be accurate and include all of the required parts because that's how consumers make their decisions regarding a product. Are QR codes only prohibited for cottage food? No. QR codes in general are not allowed in substitute of a label. So that's even something that we do in the manufactured food program. If it's a required element of a label, like the ingredient listing, the allergen statements, they cannot just have that information in a QR code. That is something that we get complaints about from other states or others, and we investigate as complaints. So QR codes cannot be used in lieu of a label. It really should only be used to provide supplemental information.
There is one on here that, or there is one that's not on here that I'm very surprised about, and so I'm hesitant to even say it. But health claims is not on here,
Oh,
which really surprises me.
yes. So Anna, what's your concern about health claims?
So when we look at health claims not allowed on any of the labels. So if they're saying that it treats something or it's something to do with the action of it. So if it's treating or if you are,
Curing
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
or curing.
Curing. Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to think of some other ones. That is not allowed on a food label. We're seeing more and more health claims come up, and they're trying to, especially in cottage food, they're trying to pass it as a food item, even though they're not food items. So this is something that we do not regulate. If they're making an item that is more for medicinal purposes, our food program does not regulate it. So it's not something that we would even want to go down that road with. That doesn't mean they can't sell it. They just can't sell it under cottage food. It's not something that we look at or even consider regulating in the sense. So if you're seeing that, I'd send it right back and say, nope, we're not doing this. This is not something that we regulate.
Yes, Anna, thank you for bringing that up. I think that is something that we see particularly with certain products. I'm seeing them filter into the chat.
Mm-hmm.
It and I want to be clear in that when we're talking about those kind of products and dietary supplements and health claims, it's not just the label. It is also the advertisement around that. So if they're selling that product and making health claims in things like additional pamphlets or additional online resources that are on that product, that's definitely something to be aware of too. So thank you, Anna, for bringing that up.
Yeah, I it comes up a lot where we get a lot of labels from people or recipes and asking us if this would be allowed. And I would stop it from the start, send it directly back to them and say, we do not regulate medicinal items before you even go down that road. So if you see any sort of health claim or any sort of, take 1 to 2 teaspoonfuls for um, immunity, send it right back. That's just not something that we would even look at or want to look at. So we're only looking at products that are intended for consumption to eat or for food purposes. I guess drink too.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Anna.
I was hesitant. I didn't know what road it was going to
No,
go
it's good.
down.
I say something else that's kind of a nice segue from health claims, and it comes up every farmers market season. I think because we work with food, people assume that we work in all walks of food, but pet treats, pet food uh, are not regulated under our program or human as a human food program. So pet food's regulated by the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and any inquiries or concerns about pet treats or pet food should be referred to the Illinois Department of Ag. So it seems like we have all these wonderful cottage food bakers, and they want to do pet food in addition, and it's regulated separately. So Illinois Department of Agriculture has information on their website, If you're running into any questions about pet treats, pet food, give them over to Illinois Department of Ag. So resources for farmers markets. I've covered quite a few different regulations, talked about different farmers market vendor types. Number one resource and what this presentation was originally kind of based on was the Farmers Market Food Safety Guide. That was released in 2023. It was the result of a really great stakeholder group that came together from the Illinois Farm Bureau, I believe Illinois Farmers Market Association Extension, Illinois Department of Ag, of course, Illinois Department of Public Health. We all came together to work on updating that guide, and that guide's available on our website. It's free to download, has all of this information outlined. It's a great resource. If you're trying to keep in your head all of those different farmers market types, we have an IDPH farmers market vendor type table. So on our farmers market website, we have a table that breaks down each of those vendor types and highlights what activities they are allowed to do under that permit type and what activities they are not allowed to do under that permit type. So it's a great resource to kind of help keep organized. Of course, we have our cottage food guide for our cottage food operators. We also have specific guidance, I think currently up to date, for cottage food labeling. Anna, is your one pager available?
Yes, it is on the SharePoint. Let me see if I can grab it real quickly.
So we also have a one pager on cottage food labeling that Anna has put together. So that's a great resource if you're just running into that labeling issue. Food establishments. So we have a temporary food service guide on our retail food page. We also have farmers market sampler food safety guide that's available in our IDPH farmers market sampler certificate application. Anna's going to dive into farmers market samplers kind of in the next segment. So uh, hold on and we'll get you more information about that. But kind of takeaways for the first half of our regulatory refresher, food safety is a shared responsibility amongst food businesses and public health. So make sure that you're working together, and there are many food vendors that operate in farmers markets. So make sure that you're applying the appropriate regulations as you move between vendors. It's also something to highlight to market managers you're working with, event organizers, or vendors. I can see sometimes frustration comes over, why does that vendor get to do this and I do not? They could be operating under different vendor types, and that's something that you may want to clarify with people is that if you would like to operate in that way, this is a different permit type. Another thing is that risk factors remain consistent across any food operation. So we should always be doing risk-based inspections with our focus being on the 5 risk factors. But your inspections may need to switch field focuses between vendor inspections. So have yourself prepared to focus in on those things specific to those farmers market vendors, primarily like we talked about, approved source, temperatures for holding and labeling. Also, don't forget there are resources available to help inspectors, including the Farmers Market Food Safety Guide, and we also have our office hours every week for local health departments, as well as our SharePoint where we have more resources available. Particularly, I didn't highlight it, but we also have a one-pager on the poultry exemption that's available on the SharePoint site that you guys can use to approach those type of vendor or to prepare yourself for those type of inspections. And also would help to look at the poultry exemption website ahead of time to see if there are any of those type of producers operating in your area. Otherwise, we are moving on to the next portion, which would be Anna's farmers market sampling requirements. Anna, do you want to take a quick break or do you want to dive into it?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take like a 10-minute break. Everybody can jump up and move around. It shouldn't take too long, but give everybody a chance to, if you need to take a quick break for something. And we'll come back at, let's say, right at 1:30.
Is that good, Jeannie, or can we pause the recording so that people...
I will try and pause it. I've never paused one before. Yes, I can.
Started. Awesome. All right. First of all, I just want to thank, I see 115 participants, and that is just fantastic. So I am just so happy to see that many people staying on and joining and getting a little bit of a refresher today. So thank you all for sticking it out with us and signing up and being part of this webinar. So I also really want to thank Janie because this all happened because of her. She brought it to us at the end of last year, and she has just been a powerhouse in supporting the farmers markets. And so, of course, we thought it was a great idea. So thank you, Jamie, for putting this together or kind of leading it for everybody. So we are going to jump into the farmers market sampling requirements. I am going to really dive into more than I thought there was to farmers market sampling, so all the ins and outs of it. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot to cover, but not a lot to cover, if that makes any sense at all. So there's lots of different elements that go along with it. We're going to talk about just what's required of farmers markets sampling, and then some of the guidance documents as far as what is required if you are going to sample. So I think this is good for the market managers and also for the local health departments, so that if you do come across one, you kind of know what to look for. Next slide. All right, so what is product sampling? So it is defined as the means for food product samples distributed free of charge for promotional or educational purposes. So that is the definition that we are looking at when we talk about food product sampling. Who doesn't love free, right? So these farmers, they're very proud of their product. They really want to showcase their product. This gives them a chance to showcase their product without having to go through any other sort of permitting that they may not really fall under, but this gives them another chance to show off that product. And just oh, Abe over here, our little guy, he likes free products too. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Abe Lincoln was known to be frugal. He always wore the same suits, and he was very generous, and he was always out to help people, but he also was a little frugal, and he didn't really see spending money if he didn't have to. So just a little fun fact for the day. Next slide. Okay, so what is a farmer's market sampling? So vendors and farmers markets may provide food product samples, sorry, left off market there, food product samples without a state or local permit, provided that the vendor complies with two different things. So they have to have state and local permit requirements to sell the food product to be sampled. And they have to take into consideration food preparation, food handling, food storage, and food sampling requirements that are specified in the food code. So they have to meet these two items to be able to disperse their food products. So let's pull up that Slido again and just see how many farmers market sampler certificates are active in Illinois right now. Dara was having all the fun with Slido, so I wanted to add one in. I just added it a few minutes ago. So hopefully my numbers are correct. Does
Give me one
okay, I was
moment.
gonna say it should be a word cloud. Okay, there we go. Not as many as needed. Is that supposed to be 300 to 500 or 300,000? Because that is quite a lot. 333 over 25,000. Wow. I'm just going to preface this by saying that there's one person that does all of the issuing at the state for these.
That's what I came off mute to say as well, is that Sherry would be overwhelmed by that.
Yes, yes. Quite a range of numbers. She would definitely laugh at the 25K for sure. Some days it probably feels like that, especially right now, because a lot of them are trying to get their sampler certificates. You can tell that farmers market season is starting based off emails that we get. All
You have a
right,
guess for
37.
500 in the chat too.
Okay. 37. I think that's the lowest number I see, and over 25K is the highest. Oh, no, there's a 40,000. All right, well, Daryl, will you reveal our answer? 370. So as of today, I just ran a report. We have 370 active farmers market sampler certificates that have been issued. Now, there are many inactive slash expired slash pending that are out there right now. So this is just the ones that are currently issued and active. 398 was close. Yes, you're right, Joe. You were getting there. Somebody else that had like 374 or something. I was like, man, this was a M&M jar. They would have won those M&Ms. All right. $370 out of 300 markets. So 1.1 to 1.2 per farmer's market. Oh, good. Good average there. Yes. Yeah. If you want to look at it that way, there's probably at each farmer's market, you probably can find at least one, hopefully, that has received a certificate. So this comes up a lot. We get a lot of questions about this, the difference between farmers market sampling versus cottage food sampling. And I just kind of wanted to talk about the differences. So farmers market sampling, you do not need an additional permit or registration from the local health department. So they do not have to receive a farmers market permit. They don't have to get a temporary permit. It can be prepared on site. It does not have to be prepared in advance and brought. And then you can only sell these at farmers markets. So any other type of festival, market, item, place cannot happen. Only if they are at a farmer's market. Now, we get a lot of questions of, well, if they've got cottage food, do they have to get the farmer's market sampling? And the short answer is no. So with the cottage food sampling, they have to register with the local health departments, and those items or samples, as we know, the main item has to be prepackaged at the residence. So if you're already prepackaging the product, you can also prepackage some samples to hand out. And they have to still be labeled. So they still have to follow all the cottage food guidelines. The one big difference is that they cannot be prepared on site. So they can't take a cottage food item and chop it up or whatnot without that farmer's market sampling certificate. But they could administer sampling from cottage food if they're doing it prepackaged. So I will say this, though, with a little disclaimer that they do need to check with their local health department to make sure that this is okay. So we still want to make sure that there's not any other regulations or rules beyond that would make the local health department require both for whatever reason. But short answer is no, you do not. Oh, yep, you're good. Sorry. Okay, so Hanks, how could cottage food how could they attach a label to a 1.5 ounce cup with lid? So again, short answer would be they'll have to use a bigger package, or they could apply for a labeling exclusion under cottage food. That would have to be done with their local health department as when they apply. So there are some labeling exemptions that they could fall under. Sure, no problem. Okay, so the difference with farmers markets is that there is a chance that there's 3 different agencies that could inspect them. So as you know, Illinois Department of Public Health could inspect them, IDOA could be out there inspecting them, or you could also see the local health department inspect them. So each vendor is kind of subject to all 3 of these different agencies to ensure that there's compliance, and that is under Section 3.4 of the Illinois Food Handling Regulation Act. Next slide, please. With the farmers market sampling certificate, there is an opportunity or a chance that the regulatory authority may invoke suspension of the sale or cessation of the sale. So there's different avenues that this could happen. An imminent health hazard could exist that would create them from not being able to sample. Maybe I'm trying to think of something. Maybe they don't have the I'm trying to think of a good one that might have come up. Dara, can you think of any that we might see that might?
So I'll look for somebody from a local health department to assist us in the chat. But one of the things I would be concerned about is if somebody was set up and they didn't have a hand washing sink, I may ask them to stop. If there was a lack of hand washing is definitely one.
Yes.
If there
I'm trying to think of
was
so many other big ones. Maybe they're working right next to a wastewater area that's covered, maybe we ran across people not having hand washing. Yes,
I would
hand
figure
washing is
hand
definitely a
washing is
big
gotta
one.
be. I was gonna say next, thank you, Steph. Temperature control. So if you come upon somebody and all of their product is TCS and it's sitting out in the sun and you have concerns that temperatures have not been controlled or that there can be a control issue.
Yeah, maybe you trying to use a hose versus making sure that it's potable water. So if you have any unique imminent health hazards that you come across, feel free to drop them in the chat. Another reason for suspension could be that the vendor products have been found to be misbranded or adulterated. So again, back to that labeling, or maybe they weren't representing that product appropriately. And then maybe not in compliance with the permit exemption. So maybe they're doing things that are beyond the sampling. Maybe they're selling the samples. So that would definitely be a cause for suspension. So the suspension of sales may continue until the regulatory authority. So again, we know that could be IDPH, that could be a local health department, or even IDOA deems that situation has been addressed. Powdered sugar stored in a swimming pool, chlorine bucket for funnel cake vendor. Yes, that would definitely be a reason to invoke a suspension. Robin, if you have a picture of that, I would love to see it. For sure. That's a good one. All right, next slide.
Yes, that is an extreme one.
That's a good one. So if the cessation of sale happens, so if there is a suspension, remember that the local health department has to notify IDPH. So since we are the agency that issues them, we need to be aware if you do for some reason suspend their permit. And again, yep, just Dara and I. So let us know, one of us, that you suspended their certificate. Both of us will have all our contact information at the end, but you can also email dph.food@illinois.gov. So just wanted another chance just in case you forgot what we looked at like an hour ago.
Well, and I do want to highlight that it is important that you notify us because we do have the ability, if we have somebody who is kind of chronically not following food code regulations, has poor food handling. Maybe you're not the only market they're showing up to without a hand washing station. We have the ability to take actions against their certificate. And so if you're having issues, please make sure you notify us and let us know if you're seeing somebody that you're suspending sales or ceasing sales so that we can take appropriate action and notify others.
Definitely. Next slide. Okay, so what does the application process look like? As you can see, I've got a QR code down there if you want to take a look at it live. This is just a screenshot of the current application. I do believe that we are currently going through publications for a new one. So there'll actually be a new application, a new guide, and a new checklist coming pretty soon. So they have to make sure that all of this information is filled out. And I'll talk about it a little bit in the next two slides, but the email address needs to make sure that it is the email address that they use regularly, that they are checking, especially for the certificates, because when Sherry releases them and she issues them, it goes to that email address that was provided. We also want to make sure that they're writing very clearly. Now that we no longer accept online applications, it is definitely pertinent that all of the information is clear and we can understand or read legibly. Something that gets missed a lot is that they forget to sign or date that they acknowledge that they've downloaded, reviewed, and understand the pre-opening and self-inspection checklist and farmers market food product sampling handler guide. So in the packet, there is a self-inspection checklist that they have to review, and then that farmer market food product sampling handler guide. So this just ensures that if they are they do not have those items when you come out to or happen to come across them, we have acknowledged that they did sign this, that they did make known that they were aware of it when they applied. The next two sections I'm going to go on over in the next slide, but then yes, Derek, can you add that URL in the chat? Or I can do it at the end. Another thing is they have to mark that 30-day for child support and sign that. And then another thing that has recently changed, as I mentioned earlier, is that we are no longer accepting online applications. So they do not have the opportunity to do it online or pay for it online. And the reason for that was because we cannot reimburse these applications. So if you apply for it and maybe you only needed to pay the $10 and not the $40, and they ask for a refund, we cannot issue that. We just don't have the ability, just with the government site that we're using. So we have found that if they apply and they didn't have all the information and we had to send it back to them, there's no sort of reimbursement that's given to them. So to alleviate that and to make it easier for not only us, but for the applicant, we now require it to be mailed directly to IDPH with a check or money order.
And I do want to clarify that we are working with our vendor to hopefully get a more user-friendly online option available. It was just that in our current system, it was not very user-friendly. It led to a lot of confusion and a lot of, frankly, overpayment, and we don't want to see people do that. So we are working on making these forms more accessible, and so we will have updated forms, and we will continue to work with our vendor, and hopefully, sometime in the future, have an online version available again.
Perfect. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of give you an outline of what happens when it's received by IDPH. So since it is we call snail mail is kind of the term for mail anymore, just because you never know how long it's going to take. Once they mail that in and it's received, that application is reviewed. Like I said, we have one person that looks them over, and she is solely in charge of issuing, approving the application. So if she gets, among all her other duties, if she gets several in during the week, especially right now, it may take us a little bit longer than normal to review those. If they are missing any documents, so if there is the food handler certificate is not in there, or the certified food manager certificate is not in there, the whole application is going to be mailed back to the applicant. That includes the check and everything. So there won't even be, I think she circles it or highlights what's missing and then sends it back to you. So with that, as you know, it's going to delay it even longer. If all the documents are received, then that check or money order is sent for validation. So that is sent to another agency, they validate it, and then they send it back. That can take up to 1 to 2 business days. Once it gets back to Sherry, so once it's been validated, then she processes the application, and then she will issue that certificate to the email address that was provided on the application. So again, make sure that if you are having one of your vendors submit that, make sure to let them know that that email address has to be the one that they use most frequently, because that's going to be how they issue it. And also pay attention to that junk or spam mail. I'm not sure that will it come from USA Food Safety. Dare, do you know offhand?
I don't know what email address it
Yeah.
comes into.
I think it's more of like a generic general one. So definitely pay attention, especially if it's been longer than 7 days. So if everything goes fluidly and everything is in there appropriately, 7 to 10 business days is the shortest amount of time that it's going to get issued to you. So it's not a quick process. It's definitely, it does definitely take some time. So if you are needing, or if you're, one of your vendors is needing it for that weekend and it's Monday, there's a chance that they may not get it that weekend, but it could be for the next weekend. So definitely something you want to encourage for them to do early and before the season even starts, to ensure that it's getting back to you as soon as possible, or back to them as soon as possible.
Yep, and I want to
Go-
note that, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that, this is something like, as I was a local, I really didn't understand the process. So I thought it was important to share it with the locals so that they can explain to the vendors kind of what to look forward to, as long as how long it would take.
I also want to note that we cannot renew a certificate preemptively. So that is something that we're kind of facing this year that I've talked to office staff about, is that if we receive something and they're not expired yet, it cannot be renewed preemptively. And it's also important to note, I don't know if you're going to cover this, so I apologize if I am jumping ahead of you. One of the most common errors we have in the application process is people try to apply as a business. And that is not the intent of the sampler certificate. The intent of the sampler certificate is it to be an individual certificate, more like kind of like a food handler card or a certified food protection manager. It's not transferable between individuals. So a common issue we see is people apply thinking that they'll get one certificate to cover all the employees in their business when anybody who has to sample needs one. So sorry if I jumped the
No,
gun.
you're good. I was not. I was, my next slide did talk about individuals, but so yeah, so as you can see, for the requirements for IDPH sampler certificates, Dara really hit the nail on that. So it's individuals with a valid certified food protection manager certificate, or individuals without a valid certified protection manager certificate. So like Dara said, they are not for your whole group. It's only for that individual person that is sampling. So this one is on the application. I kind of just highlighted it and made it a little bit bigger to talk about. But if they have a certified food protection manager certificate, they have to submit the completed application, their current certified food protection manager certificate, not one that's expired, and then a $10 fee. So that has to be in a check or money order. Please do not mail cash to us. I don't think she can even accept it. Individuals without a valid certified food protection manager certificate, they have to submit the completed application. They have to complete a food handler training course, and those can be found on our website under food handler training. The completion of the IDPH's Farmers Market Food Handler Training, which is on iTrain, and I have some slides next to show that, and then a $40 fee, so check or money order. So it's either going to be $10 with the Certified Food Protection Manager or $40 without. Next slide. Okay, so this is what the Train Illinois looks like. What they'll have to do is set up a create new account, which it looks like my bubble went a little down, but so they'll need to create a new account. With that, it's pretty quick that they can get it back. If they have an existing account, they just have to log in. I found that the easiest way to find it is to use that little magnifying glass in the corner. So this is the main screen of it, and just type in Farmers Market Food Product Sampling or Illinois Farmers Market Food Product Sampling. It typically shows up one or two down, unless you put in the exact title. So for some reason, it's not the first one, but it's typically the second or third one. When you find that, you click on it and it will take you to the bottom of the screen. This is what it's going to look like. And in order to start it, you're going to hit launch. It should take about 45 minutes to complete. And then at the end, they will receive a certificate that will need to be mailed with their application. This is what the certificate's going to look like. So it's going to have the expiration date. It's going to have a certification number on there or registration number on there, as well as a facility number. And then it's going to have your name listed, as well as your region on there. So these are, I don't know if any of you remember the old certified is it FS? Can't even remember the credentials now. The old Certified Food Protection Manager, when it used to, yes, thank you, FSSMC. Thank you. Yeah, that's what they were similar to back then, if you ever saw those hanging. So I don't know if anybody, I know sometimes whenever you are in establishments, they'll show you that certificate. I don't know. Sorry, this is a little off track, but and you're like, I think that's a little old. But yeah, this is what it's going to look like when it gets issued to them by email. So these certificates are valid for 36 months from the issue date, and they are not transferable between individuals. So this is only for the person that is applying. 2018, holy moly. Wow. Sorry, that made me feel old. They're required for all persons who engage in tasks such as unpacking, cutting, slicing, preparing, or distributing food product samples. And all persons that possess a valid sampling certificate or a copy has to have it displayed at the point of sale. So those have to be in a prominent location and available if any of the agencies come by and see that they are sampling. I believe this leads us to our next slide. Yeah, so what type of issues do you see with farmers market samplings? Feel free to type in some answers. Temperatures, food safety, yes. We're gonna get into the food safety part of it. No hand washing. Wrong person. Yeah, so if they've got an employee that is sampling and not the person that was issued the certificate, they didn't get a permit. Yes, I had a feeling that was going to be one that would pop up, is that they didn't know, or they didn't know they had to.
I'm curious, effective barriers, if that's to no bare hand contact or
Sanitation is in the chat.
bare hands. Yeah, I would be very concerned about bare hand contact
For sure.
for people who have not kind of been through that training and know. A lot of us don't necessarily think about that if we don't have experience with food service or with that.
So commissary, as far as for sampling, they don't get the permit. Yeah, so definitely a lot that we see, and a lot of the emails that we do receive are, I didn't know I was supposed to have this. I need to apply. I need it by tomorrow. We get that a lot. So whenever you are sending out those applications or you're approaching them, make sure they know that it could be up to 7 to 10 days. So yeah, so
I,
lots of food safety concerns.
I definitely think that is one of these items. I'm seeing so much on the not knowing they needed a license or they didn't get the permit. I think that's definitely a conversation that as local health departments, that you could have with market organizers, market managers on, hey, if you guys have, vendor information packets that you're putting together, if they want to sample, they will either have to receive this for whatever you require in your jurisdiction. So if you do require a temporary event, or they need to acquire the certificate, unless they're doing prepackaged. So it might be a good idea to outline what you allow for sampling in your jurisdiction and share that with any market organizers or market managers so that they kind of know what they can share with vendors as well.
Definitely. And another great reason why we're doing this. So Dara and I will both get the opportunity to talk to the farmers market vendors, I believe tomorrow, and then some of the managers on Thursday in the same format, that we'll be able to discuss some of these things that maybe we're seeing from the local regulatory side of it. Awesome. So yeah, so with those, like I said, a lot of the issues that I keep seeing besides permitting, which looks like it comes up a lot, is the food safety concern. So I'm just going to walk through some of the requirements that they should have for the sampling, and just kind of the things to look out for, what would be allowed and what's not allowed. So just to start it off strong, so to set up to sample, we all know that we need potable water. So we need clean water to use in order for a variety of things. So food preparation, warewashing, hand washing. So typically without water, it would definitely be an imminent health hazard, something that we really need to take into effect. If they don't have potable water, chances are they are not going to be able to sample. Click it. Hose. What do we think? Do you think a hose would be allowed? That's okay. No, unless it has been approved source. I know sometimes at some of the fairs they do have this, but chances are just a regular old garden hose is not going to be sufficient for potable water. Food grade hose only. Yes, yes. Drinking water, so bottled water, definitely would be okay. But again, just wanting to make sure, where's that water coming from? Are they refilling those water? Is it, sealed when it comes in? So we really want to make sure that potable water is available and active during sampling. Next slide. Another thing for setting up a sample is going to be the hand washing station. So again, we need to make sure we have that water from an approved source. I put warm water on a lot of the guides that we use. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the intent is that we want them to wash their hands. Obviously, if they have access to warm water, fantastic. However, we do not, got a little crazy there for a second. The intent is that we just want them to wash their hands. So as long as they've got clean potable water, chances are we are okay with it. A container with a free flow spigot. So something that once they turn the nozzle or press the button, it's free flowing. So it might look like a lever or a handle that they turn. The intent is that we want to make sure that no hands are touching it, that they're not having to press that button to wash one side and then the other. Underneath that, we need to have a bucket of equal or larger size to catch the wastewater. So we do not want that water spilling onto the ground, whether it is grass or pavement. We want to make sure that it is going into a catch basin and then it is disposed of properly. Hand soap. So making sure that we have hand soap available to wash our hands with, along with the water. And then disposable paper towels, and a trash can to dispose of it properly. So all of those make a perfect hand washing station. Next slide. Again, I noticed temperature comes up a lot. So rule of thumb is we want to keep those cold foods cold and we want to keep those frozen foods frozen. So there's a couple of different variety of ways to do that. As you guys know, that for it to be considered cold for holding, it has to be 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below. And then for freezing, it has to be 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below to keep it frozen. A couple of different options that we have seen is some hard-sided coolers. The soft ones aren't really going to keep them as warm unless they've got like the styrofoam inside of it. So we really do recommend that you keep those using those hard-sided coolers. Some even have mechanical means, so maybe a chest freezer that they have. If it's more of a permanent that they can stay there, or maybe like they rent that space for over a period of time, they might have some mechanical chest freezers or refrigerators available. And then ice packs is another great option. So making sure that ice packs are frozen and that they're keeping that cold food cold and frozen food frozen. I just put that sun in there because the intent is that we want to avoid direct sunlight. Click the button, Dara. Yep, there it is. We want to avoid direct sunlight. We want to make sure that the cold foods are not sitting directly in the sun, that they're covered somehow, whether they're under a table or they're out of that direct sun. We know that it will warm it up a lot quicker if that sun is shining directly on the foods. Another element to setting up a station is going to have a sink station. So for sanitizing, this could be separate sinks, pails, or some sort of basin or bucket. And the intent is to wash, rinse, sanitize, and then air dry. Typically, if they do not have the means to sample properly or they don't have the right equipment, they need to have this set up in their station. I just put a little disclaimer that it is not necessarily required if they do have adequate means. So if they're maybe using all disposable products and getting new ones every time, or they bring 10 pairs of tongs because they don't want to wash, rinse, and sanitize, that is perfectly okay. But if they don't have it, if they only have one tong or one knife, for their sampling, they must have a wash, rinse, sanitize, and air dry set up. And then just for another element that we look for that's in the guide is setting up a sanitizer bucket. So they must have a designated bucket. It has to be labeled for only for that use. So should say sanitizer only, or not for any other purposes, or maybe bleach water. So it has to be labeled and designated for that. It brings me back to Robin earlier saying that they were putting the food in the pool chemical. We obviously don't want to see a food in a sanitizer bucket that was designated for that. They have to use a US EPA registered sanitizer. So bleach is typically the most common one that we see. Again, just to keep a lookout for whether the bleach is approved for food contact surfaces or if they're trying to use a household bleach, maybe one that maybe says on there not for food safety, or it might say for laundry purposes. Chances are if it's a scented bleach, it is not going to be okay for food contact surfaces. So if it's lemon or lavender scented, chances are that is not a registered sanitizer that can be used. They also have to have designated wiping cloths available. So starting out with a dry wiping cloth, and then once it is used, it has to remain in that sanitizing bucket when it's not in use, just to make sure that we're not harboring any bacteria while it's sitting out there. And then test strips. So in order to check the validity of the sanitizer, we need to make sure that they have adequate test strips, that they're testing the proper concentration, and that they're using them and know how to use them. Just a few other things to consider when sampling, just some food safety concerns that periodically come up. Making sure that they have a metal stem thermometer that has been calibrated. Feel free if for some reason you're out there, or if you are checking it, to ask them if it's been calibrated, or even walk them through how to calibrate it. So I always like to do that in the restaurants, where I show them how to calibrate it, show them some tips on how to do it. Same would go with the farmers market vendors. Just a chance for you guys to kind of hang out, maybe talk and calibrate it, doing some education as well. You want to make sure that equipment and utensils are in good condition. Maybe single service articles. So if they're using the proper articles, if they're considered single service, or if they are trying to use them for multiple times. Again, adequate number of utensils for serving. So if they only have maybe one knife, but they're doing a variety of different items, making sure that they have that either 3-compartment sinks set up, or discuss with them about having additional utensils for future sampling. Single-use gloves, so very important that bare hand contact, making sure that they're not touching those ready-to-eat foods. Yeah. Also, make sure you're on mute if you came off for whatever reason. So making sure they have those single-use gloves, no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. A means to keep the food and equipment off the ground. There we go. So again, the food code says 6 inches. That's a good rule of thumb. So having some sort of crates or something to make sure that it's not touching the ground. So easier access for contamination, or even little tests to get into it when it's directly down on the ground. Waste receptacles, so making sure that we have trash cans available, maybe with lids on them, to eliminate some sanitation concerns. Keeping the chemicals stored separately. So if they are using any types of toxic chemicals, that they're not mixed in with the foods that they are sampling. And then, of course, hair restraints. So whether it's a hair net or maybe even a hat, making sure that they're keeping their hair back and out of the way. One thing with farmers markets that you see the most often is that, of course, since they're outdoors and the wind is blowing, there is your hair just flying all over this. So just to avoid that physical hazard, make sure that you have those your hair restrained. And that is all I have as far as some food safety concerns to keep in mind. Again, all of these are outlined in our guide that is available on our website. It is supposed to be reviewed by the sampler when they are setting up. So direct them to that. Hopefully soon we'll have a dated version, as in like in the next couple of days. So it's definitely been improved, and we've added a lot of different things that wasn't previously on there. So some food safety concerns based off of questions and emails that we received from you guys. So we have updated that. With that, hopefully you guys have a better understanding of the process of food sampler certificates, how it's issued, and then some things to kind of pinpoint and or look out for as far as when it comes to the sampler that's been issued. So I know we ended a little early, and we wanted to leave plenty of time for questions for whether it's farmers market or either the sampler or any sort of chance for you guys to ask. So Dara, I believe there should be another Slido, right? Is this?
They should have access to a Q&A now.
Okay, so if you have questions and you don't want to unmute or raise your hand or even put in chat, feel free to put it on Slido and we can address it as we go.
You do have a question, it seems, about bucket or wipes.